Professor Whitman. I'm going to be informing you today on the lockout of the NFL, which is the National Football League, and my audience is here with me today. And the other person is the one holding the camera. The lockout started in June 2012 for the National Football League, and the reason why they did it is the refs wanted money, pensions, better benefits. The part-time referees were only making about $149,000 a year, and they're hopefully trying to make $170,000 to $200,000. Some things we're going to talk about as the replacement refs. They're calling too many penalties and not calling penalties they should be. Another thing is refs are not knowing the right calls and bad calls, which change the outcome of any kind of football game. The first thing is we're going to talk about is the refs calling too many flags and flags that should be called. And one of the things is holding calls. Some ways of holding is you can just when they're grabbing by their jersey and all this kind of stuff, they can't grab by the collars, their face mask, anything kind of like that. So the replacement refs aren't seeing some of the calls, and they're calling little things just by grabbing on the jerseys and not holding too long. Another thing is pass interference. Most of the time pass interference occurs with the defense. Most of the replacement refs are not calling it when it can be pass interference on the offense. There's been a lot of that this year, and they're mostly just calling on the defense, just thinking that's what it's going to be. Another thing is players are making the refs call certain flags when they're complaining that they had pass interference, they got ripped by certain ways, and the refs are not experienced, so they see that some football players complaining about it, so they're going to call the flag, which is not right. Another thing is another way is blocking calls. So like a wide receiver, the first 5 yards can have interference with the other guy, and a blocking call is if they're hitting each other in the face, they can't do that. They can't grab each other by the face mask or anything like that. They're not calling that. Another thing we're talking about is the replacement refs not knowing the right call. So for instance, Washington Redskins and the St. Louis Rams were playing in a game, and the Washington Redskins called a challenge on a fumble, and when the fumble occurred, the referees called it a fumble. Once the referees called a fumble, they cannot challenge it. When they challenged it, the referees overturned it, and which lost the Redskins a game. So that was a huge call by the referees, which was not the right call. Another one is whenever there's an incomplete pass, the clock is supposed to stop. But during the game for the Bengals and Browns, one of the Browns, the quarterback threw the ball incomplete in 23 seconds, was run off the clock, which in 23 seconds anything can happen. There could have been a touchdown or a field goal. So that was another outcome of the game that could have been changed. And another one was the 49ers were playing the Vikings last week, and the 49ers called a timeout. And during the timeout, they wanted to challenge a play, but when you challenge a play, it takes a timeout. So the referees took back the timeout and then did the challenge, which you cannot do, because if you do it that way, it takes 2 timeouts, which the 49ers did not have. So the replacement referees didn't really know what they're doing, and they should not have taken back the timeout and then done the challenge. The next one we're going to talk about is the refs making bad calls, which changed the outcome of a game, which was one of the biggest outcomes of last week was the Packers playing the Seahawks. The Packers were up 3 points going in the fourth quarter, and the Seahawks quarterback made a pass which was intercepted by the Packers defense, and the Packers defense tackled the quarterback, and the referees called it roughing the passer, which is when the defense tackles the quarterback after he passes it. There's a certain amount of time, usually about 3 seconds, but it was really a second after, and they called it roughing the passer. So the Seahawks got first down, and the next play, the Seahawks threw it up, and the Seahawks actually made the pass interference, but they called pass interference on the defense just because they're inexperienced, like I was talking about earlier, which calls for another first down for the Seahawks closer to the end zone with 3 seconds left, and the Seahawks threw it up in the end zone, and once again, the Packers defense picked the ball, interception, and the Seahawks guy grabbed it from him in midair, and when they were on the ground, the Seahawks guy they wrestled for the ball, and the Seahawks got the ball, and they called it a touchdown, which overall, the Packers intercepted the ball, and the game should have been over. Due to that, the Seahawks won, and $1 billion was exchanged between people's hands due to betting on the game, And another thing in fantasy football, 1.3 million people were, like, their outcome of their fantasy leagues changed due to that. And one other thing was the Seahawks got a fourth timeout, which only in one half of a football game you're only allowed 3 timeouts. So when they got the fourth timeout, they give them more time to rest or do certain things, and that's another thing that should not be allowed. Any other referee for the NFL would have noticed that. And to conclude everything, the replacement refs are not ready for the NFL. They're not ready for the pace of play. They've always been doing like college football or high school football. It's just a different pace, a different atmosphere, all that kind of stuff. And the lockout just ended on September 27th, 2012. Due to the lockout ending, the referees are now getting $170,000 a year for experience, which is what they wanted. And by the time of 2019, they will be getting about $200,000 and with benefits and pensions and everything they want. And that is my presentation.